In 1987, a 64-year-old man named John Whitfield walked into Loma Linda University Medical Center for the first day of CHIP, the Coronary Health Improvement Project. I founded CHIP in 1985. By the time John sat down that Monday morning, his fasting glucose was 168. He was injecting 40 units of insulin a day. 3 physicians across 2 states had told him his diabetes was permanent. 8 weeks later, his fasting glucose was 102, and he was injecting 0 units. His pancreas had not regrown. The only thing that changed was what he put on his plate. And here's what I want you to understand. He ate bread, he ate rice, he ate potatoes. Every day. The story repeats. Patricia Owens, age 71, walked in 2 years later with an HbA1c of 9.2. 12 weeks later, her HbA1c was 5.6. She also ate bread, rice, and potatoes. Pastor Calvin Hardy enrolled at 78 after 14 years on basal insulin. 11 weeks later, he discontinued the insulin under his endocrinologist's supervision. I want to be honest right at the start. These 3 are composites. Their trajectories sit inside the published outcome distribution of roughly 40,000 CHIP participants tracked since 1985. But I have built them out of pooled data rather than from any single chart. The numbers are real, the biographies are simplified. About 47% of insulin-dependent type 2 diabetics who enroll in CHIP under physician supervision discontinue insulin within 8 to 12 weeks. The average drop in HbA1c in the diabetic subgroup at 12 months is 1.4 points. These are aggregate figures published by Morton, Rankin, Kent, and myself in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine in 2016, with supporting data from Englert 2007 and Aldana 2005. The question is the one everyone asks. How? The answer is not low carb, not keto, not even Mediterranean. The answer is 3 specific food preparation methods, plus 1 drink, quietly practiced in Adventist kitchens around Loma Linda since the early 1960s. Everyone has solid biochemistry behind it. The Loma Linda market in 1962 figured out 3/4 of what modern glycemic control research finally caught up to in the 2010s. The landmark paper is Oostman 2002, Journal of Cereal Science, on the effect of lactic acid on blood glucose and insulin responses to cereal products. Oostman's team fed healthy volunteers 2 breads from the same flour, same weight, same macros, 1 leavened with baker's yeast, 1 with a lactic acid bacterial starter sourdough. The sourdough produced a glucose response 15 to 25% lower. Replications since DeAngelis 2009, Maioli 2008, Lappi 2010 have held the magnitude when fermentation is at least 12 hours and dough pH drops below 4.5. 3 mechanisms at once. First, lactic acid slows gastric emptying. The bolus sits roughly 30% longer before release. Second, the lactic environment during long ferment physically alters starch granule structure, reorganizing amylose and amylopectin into a configuration less accessible to alpha amylase. Third, organic acids from the bacteria inhibit alpha amylase directly in the small intestine. 3 breaks on the same wheel. The bread does not become low carb, it becomes slow carb. The Loma Linda Sanitarium Bakery, operating continuously from the early 1900s until the 1990s, used a 24-hour ferment, hard red winter wheat, stone ground on site, with the bran retained. Leavened with a wild yeast starter cultivated since the 1920s. Mix in the morning, ferment at room temperature 8 to 12 hours, refrigerate overnight, bake the following afternoon. Patricia Owens had been eating that bread 2 slices a day for 30 years before her diagnosis. She kept eating it through her drop from HbA1c 9 to 2 to 5 to 6. Bread was not the enemy. The bread method was the lever. What you can do at home. Day 1. Mix 100 grams whole wheat flour with 100 grams water in a glass jar. Each day, discard half and refresh with 50 grams flour and 50 grams water. By day 6, you have a wild yeast starter. To make the bread, mix 100 grams active starter with 300 grams water, 450 grams whole wheat flour, and 8 grams salt. Stretch and fold 4 times over 2 hours. Refrigerate overnight, 12 hours minimum. Shape. Proof 3 hours, bake at 450 Fahrenheit for 40 minutes. If you wear a CGM and test it, the curve will be visibly lower than supermarket bread. The Ostman magnitude holds. Mate, Hu, and Campos published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2011, looking at bean-to-rice ratios in San Jose, Costa Rica. Higher bean-to-rice ratios correlated with lower fasting glucose, triglycerides, and waist circumference, independent of caloric intake. The mechanism goes back to Walliver and Jenkins 1985. When legumes are added to a starch meal, postprandial glucose drops 25 to 35%. Soluble fiber slows gastric emptying. A protein-starch complex forms during digestion, slowing alpha amylase access. The fermentable fraction reaches the colon and is fermented into short-chain fatty acids butyrate, propionate, acetate, which improves subsequent meals' glucose handling. The bean meal at noon flattens the rice meal at 6. That is Walliver's second meal effect. And it is not small, on the order of 15% improvement in the evening meal's glucose response from the noon meal's legume content alone. In Adventist kitchens, the beans and rice are typically cooked separately and combined on the plate. That is good, not optimal. Across CHIP outcome data and Mate's epidemiology, the variant producing the strongest blunting is the co-cooked lentils and rice in the same pot, same water. Brazilian feijoada, Indian dalbat, Cuban moros y cristianos, Mexican arroz con frijoles, and the Adventist haystack base all share this intuition. The co-cook outperforms side by side by roughly an additional 10%. Protocol: half cup short grain brown rice, half cup green lentils, rinsed, 2 1/4 cups water, bay leaf, 1 clove garlic, half a teaspoon salt, 1 tablespoon olive oil, hard boil, cover, lowest simmer for 45 minutes. Rest 15 minutes. 5 cuisine adaptations, same chemistry. 1. Adventist haystack serve over corn tortilla chips with tomato, avocado, salsa. 2. Brazilian swap black beans, add bay and orange peel. 3. Indian dalbat cumin, turmeric, ginger, finish with lemon. 4. Mexican cumin, oregano, 1 chipotle. 5. Cuban moros black beans, green pepper, cumin. The cuisine changes, the mechanism does not. John Whitfield ate this dish every weekday lunch during CHIP. Half cup brown rice, half cup lentils, co-cooked with a vinegar-dressed salad. Lunch was not avoiding the carbohydrate. Lunch was the lever. The third method most surprises new participants. Potato starch can be chemically restructured by temperature alone. No fermentation, just heat, then cold, then heat again. Englist, Kingman, and Cummings published in 1,992 inches the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the classification we still use. RS1 is starch locked inside intact cell walls. RS2 is starch in native granular form. RS3 is retrograded, amylose cooked, cooled, recrystallized into a structure that resists digestion. RS4 is chemically modified. RS3 is the fraction we can engineer at home. When you boil a potato, granules swell and gelatinize, and the amylose unfolds. Eaten hot, those chains are highly accessible to alpha amylase. Digest fast, spike fast. Cool the potato, and the chains slowly recrystallize into a tight helical structure that no longer fits the enzyme's active site. The starch becomes resistant and reaches the colon, where bacteria ferment it. Critically, when you reheat to normal eating temperature around 70 degrees Celsius, the retrograded crystals do not melt. They are heat stable, up to roughly 130. You can eat the potato warm and still capture the effect. Cool time matters. Sajjalata, Singhal, and Kulkarni, 2006. Comprehensive Reviews in Food Science and Food Safety pulled together the RS3 formation kinetics. For Yukon, gold at 4 degrees Celsius. After 2 hours of refrigeration, about 6% of starch has retrograded. After 12 hours, about 18%. After 24 hours, the curve plateaus at 22%. The practical sweet spot is overnight, 12 hours, 18%. Comparing cooled and reheated potato against the same weight of freshly cooked hot potato, the cooled version produces about a 28% reduction in glucose area under the curve. Robertson 2003 and Robin 1994 are the crossover trials I trust. Reverend Calvin Hardy could not imagine giving up potatoes. He grew up in the South, where the evening meal without potatoes was foreign to him, and at 78 he was not interested in rebuilding his table around a foreign template. Within the Chip Teaching Kitchen, we showed him this. Sunday afternoon, boil 3 pounds of Yukon Gold whole with skins on. Cool the pot on the counter to room temperature. Refrigerate 12 hours. Each evening, slice the cold potatoes, reheat in a dry skillet with olive oil and rosemary, eat them with the meal. His evening glucose, on the same potato weight, dropped on average 40 milligrams per deciliter from the first week. There is one universal layer over all 3 methods: raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar. The Loma Linda market pamphlets from 1962 recommended 1 tablespoon diluted in 8 ounces of water, sipped over 15 minutes before the noon meal. They did not know the postprandial mechanism. They had figured out the practice 40 years before the laboratory caught up. The catch-up paper was Carol Johnston, Cindy Kim, and Amanda Buller. Arizona State, Diabetes Care 2004. Vinegar improves insulin sensitivity to a high carbohydrate meal in subjects with insulin resistance, or type 2 diabetes. 2 tablespoons before a standardized high-carb meal. In the insulin-resistant group, postprandial glucose dropped 34%. Hibowich 2007 showed the mechanism is partly slowed gastric emptying. Mitru 2015 confirmed the effect persists when paired with high glycemic meals in established type 2 diabetes. Chip protocol since the mid-80s. 1 tablespoon raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar in 8 ounces of water. Sip 10 to 15 minutes before the 2 largest meals. The 4 interventions stack. Sourdough flattens bread response 15 to 25%. Lentil cook flattens rice 25 to 35%. Retrograde flattens potato 28%. Pre-meal vinegar flattens any remaining curve another 20 to 30% on top. On a CGM tracing, the combined effect is a curve that barely rises above 130 milligrams per deciliter from a meal that, the conventional way, would have peaked at 220. A CGM is a small patch worn on the upper arm, reading interstitial glucose every 5 minutes. Hot white rice at 6 in the evening, in an insulin-resistant adult, climbs from a baseline of 1 to 10 to a peak of 2 to 10 over 45 minutes. The same weight of brown rice and lentils co-cooked, eaten 15 minutes after the vinegar tonic, climbs from 1 to 10 to a peak of 140 over the same window, then drops back gently. The area under that curve is approximately half. The CGM screenshots in this video are illustrative. They show the typical shape, not a promise of an individual's outcome. Stop here for 1 minute. The single most important sentence in this video is the one I am about to say. If you are currently taking insulin, glipizide, glyburide, any sulfonylurea, or metformin at 1500 milligrams or more per day, you cannot start this protocol without first contacting your prescribing physician. You can change one method at a time, slowly replace your bread with sourdough this week, and add nothing else. Observe 2 weeks, then add the bean rice co-cook. But the moment you stack 2 or 3 of these methods together, your fasting and postprandial glucose will begin to drop, often within 7 to 10 days, and if your insulin or sulfonylurea dose is not reduced in tandem, you will become hypoglycemic. Hypoglycemia in an older adult is not minor. It can produce confusion, falls, syncope, cardiac arrhythmia, and in rare cases death. Call your endocrinologist. Tell them you are starting a low glycemic lifestyle program. Most physicians, when this protocol is run properly, will preemptively reduce basal insulin by 20% at the start of week 1. Then adjust further based on your finger prick or CGM tracings. Other notes: warfarin can interact with vitamin K metabolism modestly when vinegar is added. Thiazide diuretics may shift electrolytes when carbohydrate-driven water retention drops. Established gastroparesis or significant reflux means the vinegar should be heavily diluted or avoided. None are absolute contraindications. All are reasons to coordinate with your physician before stacking the 4 methods. The food on the plate is a clinical intervention. The chemistry does not care about the grocery aisle. Treat it the way you would treat any medication, with monitoring, with a physician partner, and with respect for the fact that it is doing real work. John Whitfield, in his intake paperwork, wrote one sentence in the margin: "I have not eaten a piece of real bread in 11 years. His endocrinologist had put him on a strict low-carb plan in 1976, and bread was the symbol of everything he was not allowed. The first day of CHIP, I handed him a slice of 24-hour Sanitarium sourdough and watched him hold it before he ate it. By day 15, his fasting glucose was 134, down from 168. He asked the question almost every CHIP diabetic asks in the second week. He asked, "Am I dreaming this?" The 24-hour ferment had changed the substrate. The pancreas was not seeing the same glucose flux. Patricia Owens taught a different lesson. Her HbA1c came down from 9-2 to 7-1 in 6 weeks, then plateaued for 2. She called the clinic worried the protocol had stopped working. The food log showed she was doing the bean rice, the sourdough, and the cooled potatoes, but skipping the vinegar. She had decided 3 out of 4 was good enough. She added the vinegar tonic before her 2 largest meals. 2 weeks later, her HbA1c was 6-3. 4 weeks after that, 5-6. Take out any one of the 4 levers, and the curve floor rises. Reverend Calvin Hardy is the case I think about when participants ask whether the protocol works at advanced age. 78, 14 years on basal insulin. His endocrinologist called the CHIP clinic at week 3 because morning glucose had dropped 20 points and the basal needed to come down. We walked him through the 4 methods on the phone and sent him Englert 2007, Mattei 2011, Johnston 2004. By the end of the call, he was asking whether the Reverend could continue indefinitely. The Reverend came off basal insulin at week 11 and maintained an HbA1c between 5-4 and 5-8 for the next 9 years. The 40,000 represents participants enrolled across CHIP cohorts in the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand between 1,985 and the Morton 2016 summary. The strongest data sets are Englert 2007 Rockford cohort, 348 participants with full pre- and post-biochemistry. Aldana 2005 worksite CHIP, quasi-experimental with non-randomized comparison, and Kent 201, 3 roughly 5,000 participants tracked to 12 months. These are real-world cohort outcomes, not randomized controlled trials. The strength is the size and the consistency of magnitude across multiple countries. The limitation is no randomized comparator participants are compared against their own baseline. My honest read, after 40 years of running CHIP, is that the true randomized magnitude would be somewhere around 2/3 to 3/4 of the observational. That is still clinically meaningful. You should have the honest accounting, not the marketing version. What humbles me is that the Loma Linda market pamphlets from 1962 contain 3 of the 4 methods: 24-hour sourdough, pre-meal vinegar tonic, soak grains and beans before cooking, which is 1 step from the co-cook. The 4th cooled and reheated potato was not named, although Sabbath potato salad was essentially that. The community had figured it out empirically 40 years before Osman and Johnston and Sajilata published the mechanism. People who never read a biochemistry paper, who never wore a CGM, who lived inside a Saturday meeting and a Sabbath afternoon meal, arrived at the 4 methods by inheritance and the slow accumulation of what worked across 40,000 Sabbath dinners. They knew the sanitarium bread was the bread that worked. They knew the haystacks with beans and rice were the ones that satisfied. They knew the Sabbath potato salad did not make them feel heavy the way the hot Monday potato did. The mechanism is not the magic. The mechanism is the explanation. The community got there first. The laboratory always catches up later. I want to say one thing about cost because it matters for the population I have served for 40 years. The 4-method protocol runs between $5.80 and $7.20 per person per week, computed at current grocery prices. Whole wheat flour for the sourdough runs about 90 cents a week per loaf. Brown rice and green lentils for the co-cook run about $2.20. Yukon Gold potatoes for the week run about $1.40. Raw apple cider vinegar runs about 90 cents a week amortized across a 16-ounce bottle. A first-generation CGM, if you choose to wear one, runs about $35 per 14-day patch that is optional and not part of the protocol cost. Compare that to the monthly cost of basal insulin without insurance, which can run between $200 and $400, or the monthly cost of a sulfonylurea, which runs about $25, or the long-term cost of unmanaged HbA1c retinopathy, neuropathy, dialysis. The intervention is cheap. That is part of what makes it scale. That is also why I have spent 40 years inside CHIP rather than inside a pharmaceutical career. If you write nothing else down, write these 5 lines. 1. Bread without spike. 24-hour sourdough. Whole wheat starter. 2 slices a day. Glucose curve 15 to 25% lower per Osman 2002. 2. Rice without spike. Half cup brown rice plus half cup lentils, co-cooked in one pot, 45-minute simmer. Curve 25 to 35% lower per Mate 2011 and Wolever 1985. 3. Potatoes without spike. Yukon Gold boiled whole on Sunday, refrigerated 12 hours, reheated through the week. RS3 fraction, 18%, curve 28%, lower per Sagelata 2006 and Robertson 2003. 4. The vinegar layer. 1 tablespoon raw apple cider vinegar in 8 ounces of water, sipped 15 minutes before the carb meal. Another 20 to 30% lower per Johnston 2004. 5. The safety line. If you are on insulin, sulfonylurea, or metformin 1500 milligrams or more, call your physician before you stack 2 or 3 of these methods. The drop is real, and your dose has to come down with it. 40,000 Adventists. 40 years of CHIP outcome data. 3 carbohydrates. 3 preparation methods. 1 pre-meal drink. About $6 a week. That is the entire intervention. The bread, the rice, the potato, and the vinegar were already there in Loma Linda kitchens. Eat. Watch the curve. Call your doctor. One last thing before the summary, tied to the safety conversation. The 4 methods you just walked are one mechanism stack. The Blue Zone Body Reset is the structure I built around them so that the physician calls about insulin reduction land in week 2, not week 6, and so the bread method, the rice method, the potato method, and the vinegar layer phase in one at a time, the way CHIP has run since the mid-80s. The stack works on its own. The reset is what keeps it working past month 3. One practical sentence on how to start. Do not start with all 4 on Monday. Start with 1. If you have a CGM, wear it for a week, eating the way you currently eat. The following week, change only the bread by a 24-hour sourdough from a real bakery. Ask how long the dough sits. The answer should be at least 12 hours. Or start your own, using the Chapter 2 protocol. Compare your postprandial peaks. The week after, add the bean rice co-cook at lunch, then the cooled reheated potato, then the vinegar tonic. By the end of the month, all 4 are stacked, and you have built the protocol on data from your own pancreas rather than on my 40-year averages. The video ends here. The protocol begins on Monday morning, with 1 slice of real sourdough bread and a finger prick reading 2 hours later. Go now and start.